Welcome to another Zrok Office Hours. Happy Friday. It's been a bit of a week, but I'm excited because we're going to start talking about some of the new path to version 1.0 stuff that I'm working on, and we're finally making some progress towards. And I've got some interesting stuff to show off with the new Zrok agent, which I think a lot of people are going to be excited about. It's going to make Zrok a lot more powerful for a lot of people in various kinds of environments, whether it's production workloads on servers or it's inexperienced users who aren't comfortable with the CLI on the desktop. I think we're going to have some interesting stuff happening over the next couple of months. I was just looking at the OpenZD YouTube channel to see when the last Zrok Office Hours video came out. Looks like it was about a month ago. And that was when we put the interstitial pages feature out, which for the most part has been going pretty well. There have been a couple of users who have run into some stuff with WebSockets and things like that, where it's been a little problematic, but generally it's been pretty well received for the most part. If you do run into any issues with it, feel free to reach out to us on the OpenZD discourse group. It's probably the best place to get hold of the entire team. So yeah, let's take a look at the project board. So this is the development roadmap, and I've kind of got it broken into a board with epics on it. So the sort of the big ticket items that need to be worked on for 1.0. Bunch of cool stuff coming down the pipe: declarative sharing, Zrok Compose, the new web console, next generation metadata around shares and accesses, updated limits in the console, smoother reserved sharing stuff. I think in 1.0 we're going to finally address the limits issues, so that when you exceed a limit in Zrok 0.4 today, you'll end up getting a 404 on your share. We're going to be able to change things a little bit so that it'll properly return a 429. Which is I think over limit or whatever, resource limited, whatever the actual HTTP response code is. Released reserve share stickiness public front end. There's a bunch of stuff with how metadata about sharing is managed inside Zrok itself that's coming. It looks like we've got, a couple different things around 429s. Caddy enabled front end, so we're going to have some new capabilities in the Zrok Access stuff that uses Caddy. Some SDK improvements coming, a new desktop user interface, which is going to be quite interesting, I think. So, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today a little bit, is the Zrok agent and what it does. That's one of the new locations where there's going to be a new set of user interface. So you're going to be able to install Zrok and then never have to use the CLI. You'll be able to use a nice local web interface to manage your shares. If you don't really want to use the CLI, you'll be able to do that. Placeholder backend, more of a quality of life thing for the operations team. Flexible policy engine, that's more of how resources are managed inside of OpenZD itself. Some more ZD network lifecycle stuff. The ability to add and remove Zrok from an existing OpenZD network, that's what that ticket addresses. Local debugging interface. So some of the other tools like Zrok have the ability to sort of inspect HTTP traffic. That kind of stuff will be coming in 1.0. Service instance UI extensions. So the web console will have the ability to have extensions added to it. So you can add your own user interface wrappers in the new user interface is sort of the goal. And that's sort of a hand wavy ticket that talks about making that work. But that's a target of opportunity in the 1.0 timeline. Configuration secrets from environment variables will start making it easier to work with containerized things through the use of environment variables. Target validation, account groups. So we'll have organizations in Zrok 1.0 at some point. More refinements to Zrok drives. So a lot of the stuff that I was talking about, what was it, 9 months ago, around Zrok drives and some of the other fancy things we want to do with that, we'll start getting to that in 1.0. Alternative login options, other ways to log in and authenticate with Zrok controllers. Integrating the new OpenZD HA, the high availability version of OpenZD. We'll be dealing with that in Zrok. Reserved namespaces and Zrok agent, which is what we're talking about today. So those are sort of the big ticket items that are coming in 1.0. And I know I just ripped through that without talking a lot in detail, but at least it'll give you a flavor of some of the kinds of stuff. And I'm sure this list will grow over time. That's just sort of the epics. If you look at the 1.0 tab, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't tagged with epics. Those are more specific low-level things. Release for FreeBSD, notification stuff, like lower level stuff that's coming as well. So we're going to leave it on this board because I think this is the stuff that's relevant. So this is my usual development environment. And before I get into this demo of the agent stuff, the plan for this video is to sort of show the agent and kind of give you a quick walkthrough of how it works and what it does at a high level. And then I'll probably wrap that up, and I'm probably going to dig into looking at some code changes, like doing a little coding in this video also for those of you who are interested in Go and development and that sort of stuff. There'll be some stuff, the second half of this video will be focused on that. I think I'm going to go ahead and start working on this dual path CLI stuff, which will make more sense after the agent demo. So yeah, stick around if you want to see some coding. And I haven't, you can probably tell by me talking that I haven't really prepped for any of this. I'm just doing the usual off the cuff office hours thing, and we'll see what happens. So, all right. So this is my local development environment. I'm running a Zrok controller. I'm running a metrics bridge, which pulls the metrics out of OpenZD and puts them into the Zrok controller. And then I'm running a Zrok access public, which is sort of a public front end, which is what all the URLs for share.zrok.io resolve to as a Zrok access public. So it makes public shares work, basically. And then I've got, typically in my environment, I've got 2 extra windows I use for building and running tests and that sort of stuff. And then I usually, if I'm going to run a UI, I run it down here. So that's sort of where I run the node stuff. But for this, we don't really care about the Zrok Web Console. So I am on my V100 branch, which is sort of the plan for the 100 branch is to start aggregating all of the first release of Zrok 1.0 features. So I'm probably going to pull together some amount of these things, at least in a minimum form, and then get enough meat on the 1.0 release and then release it. So rather than kind of piecemealing tons and tons of releases early on, I'm going to try and aggregate enough to make a 1.0 announcement worthwhile and get that out. So right now, the first thing on the 1.0 branch is this Zrok agent concept. So if I go ahead and do a build, just to make sure I'm up to date, do a build, and then I do a Zrok version. I'm on 1.0x. If we look at the CLI help, right, so new Zrok, there's a new subtree of commands in this release agent. Some of this subtree is going to continue to exist, and then later on in this video, when I start talking about the new dual path CLI, this will make more sense, but some of the existing commands are going to grow in their capabilities to support this new agent. So what the agent is rather than having to run a whole bunch of Zrok share public and run them in the background, or a bunch of Zrok access public or Zrok access commands, and having to sort of individually manage a bunch of processes, Zrok agent takes care of all of that for you. So you can enable a Zrok environment, start up an agent, and just sort of leave it there. And I would expect that we're going to have nice operating system level packages that make it easy to sort of install that, hopefully up to and including like Windows services and Linux systemd things, and probably containers and that sort of stuff. Having all the things that sort of wrap this agent up and make it something that's very useful. So for now, this is sort of the nascent, early, minimum viable version of this. I kind of forked the CLI, so all of the Zrok agent commands are in their own hierarchy. So if we look at Zrok agent, there's Zrok agent start, status, version, share, access, and release. So if we do a Zrok agent start, that will actually start up an agent for us. So now there's an agent running, and the existing agent command. So if you do like a Zrok agent share, you'll see there's a public and private variant, right? And reserved. So those are share commands that are intended to provoke the agent to do a share for you. So if we do that, we do like a Zrok share public or agent share public backend mode web, and we'll share the current directory. So we do that, and immediately our CLI returns, and you can see that the actual agent itself did some things on our behalf. So if we do a Zrok agent status now, you can see that that agent now has a single share in it, right? And if we do a PSAX and grep for Zrok, you can see that there's a Zrok agent start process, and now there's a Zrok share public -- agent. So the way that the agent is currently implemented is that it manages multiple Zrok share and access processes for you as sub processes. That does a lot of nice things for us. It lets you manage those processes with regular, top and kill and all the normal Linux commands, those sorts of things. Um, I had originally thought that I was going to build the agent so that uh, it would be possible to sort of have it be one process and do all the shares within that single process. But when I got to the web backend shares, I immediately remembered, oh yeah, the caddy stuff. We're sort of using Caddy in a way that it wasn't probably anticipated people would use it. We're starting up Caddy inside of zrok, and the way that, at least my understanding of the Caddy stuff at this point, tells me that there isn't really a way for me to run multiple of those inside one process. So as soon as I ran into that, I realized I was going to have to deal with sub processes and figure out how to do that. So I ended up having to figure out how to learn about jobs on Windows and ways to manage process trees and some of that sort of stuff to kind of get to a place where all of those things just worked properly. But the long and the short of it now is that all those things are working pretty well across platform. You can do, now that we've got zrok agent status, you can see that we've got that single share. And if we access that, and if we go back up here, you can see when I ran that CLI command, it did emit the token and the front end endpoints. So if I control click this URL, it'll open that for me, and you can see that it's a regular old zrok web share. Nothing unusual there. And then we can do zrok agent release share and give it the share token, and that's now gone. Zrok agent status, right? And if we go back to that URL, it's going to return a 404, just like you would expect. Where did that go? There it is. Right, so now we're gonna get 404. And the nice thing about this is you can do, as many of these as you want. You could do multiple shares of the same thing. It doesn't really care. Manage them all as a group. Don't have to worry about managing a bunch of processes. And obviously, stuff that this doesn't currently do a great job of is it doesn't manage the individual logs. All of those kinds of things, we'll work those out as we start getting this pulled together. Nice thing, if you do kill the agent, all the shares are gone. So all those processes are managed for you. It works pretty well. So you can, zrok, I've got a share called testing. We'll do zrok agent. Let's start the agent back up. Zrok agent share reserved testing. Right. So it's web share. And then we can go to, right, and that works. You can do things like zrok agent access private testing, create a private front end for that share. Right, so it lists front ends, it lists shares, and that's bound to this address. So if I go to that address now, right, I'll get the same share. So all those things work pretty well, and that's the idea, though. So that's what the zrok agent's about. It's about when you enable an environment, you run a single process, and then you can interact with it from the CLI. And right now, if you run zrok, there's still zrok share, zrok release, zrok access. Those are all top-level CLI commands. And what I'm thinking is, we'll end up making it such that this will be controllable via configuration through the zrok config mechanism. But the behavior out of the box will be that if you're running an agent in an environment, it will try to use the agent. And if you're not running an agent and you run a zrok share, it'll just create a share in that process. So that's kind of the thing I'm going to go over when I start taking a look at the code. I don't know how long I'm going to go for, but I'll start down that path. I want to actually start working through some of that code, and I figured it might make a fun chunk of office hours video to sort of work through that. But yeah, that's sort of the agent concept. And I feel like the agent is sort of the one of the root ideas that's part of the 1.0 release is sort of, we've got the existing zrok front door, which uses systemd and some operating system packages and some containers and things to kind of make it easier to work with multiple shares and those kinds of things in production environments and manage them. I think the agent will make all of those things a lot more natural, and that you'll be able to run multiple zrok shares and manage those things, ephemeral shares, reserve shares, all those kinds of things will just sort of work. We can put, kind of similarly to the way Docker works with a compose file. That's sort of what this declarative sharing thing is going to be. You'll be able to define in some sort of a document, let's call it YAML for the time being. I haven't started working on this yet. But imagine you can create a YAML document that defines groups of network resources and run one Xerox share command and pass it that file, and it will basically create all of the resources in one fell swoop for you. That kind of stuff is coming. And right now, this agent, like if you interact with it, like if we look in my Xerox folder, right, there's an agent socket. So it uses a Unix domain socket. So the CLI is actually speaking gRPC. So if I do a Xerox agent version, it inquires to the agent what the version of the agent is. And it's actually making, it's opening that Unix domain socket and speaking gRPC to the agent directly, which is the same way that things like Docker and other tools like that work, how their CLIs interact with the backend processes. Same idea. And this approach should work for containers. It should work for any number of things. If we need to at some point, we probably could add an HTTP listener of some flavor that will speak gRPC, or some sort of a socket that speaks gRPC, something along those lines that will also work. I think there's an open source project that will take a gRPC protobufs definition and generate you HTTP APIs and all sorts of things off of it. It's in my reading list to dig into that in more detail. I think it could be useful for this project. But for right now, the minimum viable agent is just using a Unix domain socket. So, but I think another thing that's going to be very powerful is that desktop UI, right? It was down here somewhere. Where was that? Desktop user interface, right? So end user facing desktop user interface. So rather than having to interact with your Xerox agent through the CLI, and at some point in the 1.0 release series, there will be you'll be able to do Xerox agent UI, something like that, and it will pop it open in a browser for you. And we'll figure out how to make this as smooth and transparent as possible. But the idea will be that you'll have a convenient web API, web user interface that you can use to create shares, manage shares, all those kinds of things directly on an agent in an environment. So that's coming. So yeah, that's basically the agent concept. That's kind of the main thing I wanted to show off. So if you aren't interested in the coding portions, feel free to drop off. If you are, I'd love for you to stick around. So let's take a look at what I kind of wanted to start digging into. And that's this dual path CLI for Xerox agent, right? And I think what we can probably do, if we think through this, what I really want to get to is the issue reads as collapse the CLI where there are overlaps, which is Xerox share, Xerox access, Xerox release, so that Xerox share and parallel relateds work in an agent and agentless environment with manual CLI overrides. And that's really, in my mind, config overrides. So the idea is you'll be able to do a Xerox share, and if you're running an agent, it will create the share through your agent. And if you're not running an agent, it will just create it in process like it does today. So I kind of want to make the CLI smart that way, which to my way of thinking, like if I kill this agent and I go look in my Xerox folder, it took that agent socket with it. So it cleans up the agent socket when the agent process exits. So it should be really a matter of opening the agent socket and making sure that it can communicate with the agent. And if it can, well, then it will run the agent-based CLI implementation. And if it can't, it'll just run it the way it does today. So the first thing we probably should do is start out taking a look at that code. So let's go ahead, and we're branched off of V1.0. So let's go ahead and make a branch for dual path, right? Great. So now we want to branch, and let's dig into the code. So we're going to be looking at the CLI stuff to start with, I think. So if we go, actually, let's go agent client. So there's a new package for all the agent stuff called agent. An agent has agent client, which is the CLI client code, which is the chunk of code that opens the agent socket and will return a client, a gRPC client con, which is what the CLI code uses to talk to the agent. It wraps all that stuff up. So we're probably going to end up modifying this so that it will be able to tell us if it's an agent-enabled environment or not. All of the gRPC stuff lives in this agent gRPC, and there's the protobuf definition of the agent protocol as it currently sits. Very much a work in progress. And then the proc tree code that I sort of whipped together a process tree management implementation for for running the Xerox subprocesses. That sits here. And then all the implementation stuff is here. So all the model code, like here's the agent's version of a share, some of the code for monitoring and dealing with those processes, and then all of the implementations of the RPC calls, like access private. That's what it actually does when the agent receives an access private. It basically puts together a Xerox access private agent command and executes it and manages that child process. So all this new stuff sort of lives in the agent tree. There are changes, like if we go and look at there's a draft PR for this stuff as currently. No, there's not a draft PR. Oh, I merged it already. That's right. It's probably closed. Um, it is closed. Where did that go? Xerox agent. If we look at it, you can see more or less what changed. There's the agent tree that we just looked at. I added a new script for generating protobufs. And then I had to change the existing CLI to add all of the new agent subcommands. And then I changed share private, share public, and share reserved. Share private, these share commands and the access private command, they all now include a new agent flag. So you can specify -- agent. And what those do, I'll show you real quick so you can kind of get the gist of it. Modify those commands so that it will lets the Xerox share public agent. It's sort of a variant of the headless version, and what it does is it emits JSON messages to communicate to the agent itself. So the agent is looking at output from the command to get status information. So if I hit this URL now, you'll see that there are JSON objects that describe the traffic. There's a sort of a bootstrap object that describes it's an ephemeral share. So what was the token and what was the endpoints that it generated? That all comes out. That's basically what the new agent flag does. And that works for share private, share public, share reserved, and also access private, right? So there's a new agent flag here. And that protocol and that implementation may end up changing. We'll see. It seems to be working pretty well so far, so I think that's probably fine. It would also let other implementations of agents and things manage multiple Xerox processes, which is also fine. So yeah, new protobufs for the gRPC, the CLI changes. What did I change here? Oh, I added some stop commands. That's leftovers. I probably could do away with some of these things. That was from the original single process agent implementation. I changed the environment a little bit. Yeah, so now the environment package and its subpackages define the home.xerox structure in code. And what this is doing now is that it has a new agent socket method that will return whatever the agent socket is based on the environment implementation version. So that all works great. For Xerox 3, I believe it says it's not supported. You got to upgrade it. So it's only supported in Xerox 4, which is what everybody, whether you know it or not, are probably on at this point. I would highly doubt that anybody out there is running a Xerox 3 version of an environment. If you are, you can just run Xerox upgrade and it'll fix it for you. It tells you, yeah, so that's what the Xerox upgrade command does. Or is it update? I wrote it a while back. Yeah, so it will update your environment to make sure you're on the latest version of this folder, right? And that's Xerox metadata, right? Xerox 4 to tell you what, you can look at the metadata file. If you don't have one, you're on Xerox 3. If you do have one, you're probably on Xerox 4. So I had to update some of that stuff to include the agent socket, and I think the rest of it's like Go dependencies. So that's basically it. There's not a lot to this, but it's enough to sort of get the agent concept together. So yes, if we run an agent and we look in Xerox and we get an agent socket and we can talk to it, it's a safe bet that that environment is actually running an agent. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to go ahead and start looking at the code to do that. So let's close all this noise, and you're going to have to bear with me. I'm sure you can already tell it's been a long week. And I am winging this. So I think this is always fun to wing this stuff. So let's just go for it. So we're going to go into agent client, and here's the existing implementation of this stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to add let's add it to this here, is agent running. Root unity core dot root returns a bool or an error, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this code because we want an agent socket. And we don't really want that to return TUI error. That's a bug. So let's just fix that while we're at it. Return nil error, nil error. We don't want to be calling TUI code there for sure. Same thing here. Return nil error. Right. So that's all good. Yeah. All right. So there's a little bug fix while we're at it. We definitely do not want that. So why that's there is I'm sure I wrote the code for I wrote the very first thing I probably implemented. I'm pretty sure was the zrok agent version command, and I'm sure I coded this inline in that CLI command and then factored it out and forgot to change the TUI calls. So yeah, so we just fixed that. So we want to get an agent socket. If it gets an error getting an agent socket, let's look at that real quick to see what that does. We're gonna look at the actual implementation. So if we go into environment 0.4, is it in root probably? Update. No, it's probably an API then. Agent socket. I could look at the overview in here, but yeah, there we go. Return agent socket. Okay, so it literally just opens and returns the file is all it's doing. So if that returns an error, then we should return an error. It means the file path math effectively didn't work. So we're going to go return false error. Then when we have an agent socket, what we should do is, actually, we don't need to do any of this. What we need to do is call new client. So we'll say client con, yeah, so let's do that. If error is not equal to nil, dang. Yes, there we go. Return false error. And the way I want to implement this is agent running. We should only really return an error if there was really an error. Otherwise, we should not return an error and return a true or false. So if there's an error that indicates that an agent isn't running, we should just return false and no error. So we'll get to that. And I think we want to defer con close. And to make JetBrains happy, I always like to do this. Just otherwise it puts a warning saying you've ignored the error code from close. So we'll leave that. What are you upset about? We're good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go client version. We'll do context background. And it's agent grpc.version request. And I believe that doesn't take anything. Yeah, it's just empty. There's a protobufs grpc empty type. It just filled it in a second ago, but I've been filling these things in just to give myself a placeholder in case we need it. So that returns version response, so response and error. And if that got an error, that is an ignorable error. If it got an error, calling client version, we're going to assume the agent is not running. So we're going to say agent's not running, and then that was not an error. Otherwise, resp contains the version. So we're going to say, I forgot the exact math involved with this, but in the build folder, there is build metadata, and there's a series. So we're going to do a if strings dot starts is it has prefix resp dot get v, right? So that returns the version. If not strings, and that returns just a boolean, right? Yep. If it doesn't start with the same prefix as build series, right? then we're going to return an error in that case. We're going to say false error dot errors. Just errors dot error f. No, errors dot new. Again, long week. Um, yeah, errors. Uh, Actually, we wanted error f. Agent reported version this. We expected version this. And we're going to say, that's what, import the wrong package? Yeah, there we go. All right. What package is it? Oh yeah, GitHub package errors. Okay. Uh, Agent reported this, and we actually expected this. So yeah, that'll work. So if there's a version mismatch, we're going to tell the user about it. There's an agent running. We were able to talk to it, but it reported a version that we're not happy with. Otherwise, we're going to say true and nil. So if those tests all succeed, then we're going to be happy with that. So now we have an is agent running, and let's go ahead and we're going to do this brute force for the time being, and I'll figure out how to factor this out and make it more elegant in time. But let's come back into the CLI, and let's do share private because it's the simplest one. Now let's do share reserved because share reserved is the simplest one. It doesn't. Yeah. Let's look at these. So share reserved has these flags, and agent share reserved has these flags. So here's share reserved. They don't have, they have, agent share reserved has less flags. It doesn't have the headless. It doesn't have the agent. So it should work fine. We can ignore the flags in certain cases. So I think what we want to do is let's take this code and let's call it command dot agent, or it's share reserved command, right? And we're going to say this is, let's call it share reserved, right? And let's take, probably can pass it the same arguments, right? Because all we're going to have to do, yeah, we can pass it the same things. We can skip the Cobra command. Let's just pass it the arguments, right? So we say args array of string. And then we've got a func. We know why I can't type func today. Share reserved command. And we're going to call this agent share reserved. And we'll pass it the same things, right? And what we should be able to do is take all of this code and let's look at it real quick. We should be getting an environment. It doesn't matter. We don't care about any of that. So we should be able to take all of this code. Just select it all. Take all of this code. Right? And throw it in share reserved. And that should be fine. Yes, you can import that. It was imported 2 seconds ago. What's missing up here? Metadata. Yeah, you can import all the same stuff. You got client zrok. That's all correct. Share. Yeah, we want the client version. All right, so now we've got that version. And we should be able to take this agent share version, right? And copy that and put it here. And again, I will make this a little prettier in time. We'll figure out how to clean this up and make it a little less repeated and such. But really, what the body of our new command is going to be is we're going to do agent client dot is agent running. So we need to get our root. So we need to do this chunk of code. And we can really do all of this, right? And we can pass the root in here. Or dot root, right? Pass that in, so it doesn't need to do that anymore. So we're going to load that stuff, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say agent client dot is agent running, and we're going to give it the root, and that's going to tell us agent and if agent error. No, we'll do it the other way. Agent error equals, right? If error is not equal to nil, and then we're just going to TUI error checking if agent is running and dump that out. And then if agent, we're going to do command dot agent share reserved args. We'll give it the root there as well, because I'm pretty sure that also gets the root and checks if it's enabled, so we don't need to duplicate that. So we'll say root env core dot root. All right, I feel like my brain's speeding up a little bit now. So we should be able to run that and say args root else command.share reserved args root, right? And that should effectively give us a switch. And like I said, I don't know if earlier in the video, I think we want to make this switch to where you can configure the default behavior in your environment, so that the zrok config settings live in that environment. So you could enable an environment, set a config option, and say never check to use the agent, and then there will eventually be a command line flag that will let you say, hey, I want you to actually use the agent if one's running. Never default to checking for that. Or I never want you to use an agent even if one's running. You'll be able to manually specify that. For right now, in this example, I'm not going to bother with that, but that's coming. So for now, let's try this out and see if this works. It should work. So what we should be able to do is just kill this agent, right? Build this up. And I've already got that testing reserve share that exists. So I should be able to start it. If I don't start an agent, zrok share reserved testing. Always like headless. In 1.0, I almost always run the headless version. I think the TUI, the terminal user interface, this thing, the purple lines and the log stuff, I'm gonna revamp all of that and give it a facelift and make it a little more useful. I think it needs a little TLC, but I almost always personally run headless. And I want to make a config setting in the environment where it just always, you can set the default. So it just defaults to whatever you prefer. But if I do this and the agent's not running, there we go. Now it's sharing. It did it in process. So that works fine. And then if I kill that, it's gone. And now if I start an agent up, let's do zrok agent share or start, right? And then if I run that same command again, yes. Oh, look, a little buggy bug. Let's see. Why does it keep checking that over and over again? It shouldn't be doing that. Responding to version inquiry. Why was it doing that over and over again? Let's take a look at the code. What did I do that was dumb? Did something stupid. So agent client. What did I do? So run, it's loading the environment, is agent. I called, this doesn't have any loops in it. I called this. What did I do that was stupid? Did something. I'm sure somebody somewhere is screaming at the screen right now. What did I do? Agent running. Let's just put some logging in so we can see. And it worked fine when we weren't running an agent. So when the agent actually responded was when the behavior deviated. All right, so that works fine. And if I start an agent, so it did start agent share reserved. It looks like it did start like 8 billion processes. Let's look. Let's see. No, it is rolling processes though. It's doing something stupid. What did I do? Agent share reserved. And if we go into here, this is only literally called from that single place. I literally just wrote it. So only called from there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all right. Yeah, that's all right. I was looking, thinking maybe the was looking for the options wrong. No, that's all right. It's not returning an error. Let's go back to the top of this. Let's kill it sooner so we can try and figure out what might be going wrong here. Right? Or let's send it to a file. So it asked for the version 3 times. Do we do a version check in new client? I don't think we do we? Probably should. Let's do this. Let's just clearly my brain is not doing the best work it's ever done today. Let's just comment that out and or rather than that, let's just log it and see what happens. So that worked fine. Let's just log here and see what happens. I got greedy and assumed I was going to. All right. So that does the right thing. It's exactly what you'd expect. It responds one time. So that means something's wrong in agent share reserved. I wonder if it's getting the client twice that's somehow causing an issue. That shouldn't. Let's not do the share. Let's just do this stuff. All right. And we'll skip the client for now. Let's see what that does for us. I'm sure there's somebody that's like, I totally see what you did, you silly person. I'm sorry. You can just laugh at me. It's fine. Okay. So I'm happy about that. Share reserved, Connex background. And I'm 100% sure that, let's just make sure we're on exactly the code we think we're on. All right, start our agent up. Okay, that's all happy. So if we add that, well, that's not the right package. Oh, well, yeah, so you have client back. Okay. So it's literally just calling the same. If we do a Xerox agent share reserved and we testing. Oh, I just, the wave of realization just washed over me. So what we want, the wave of realization just washed over me, which is a nice feeling sometimes. What we want here is if not command agent. So we were creating a loop. The loop, what was happening was, what's happening is I broke the dash dash agent, and I just figured that out because when I tried to run it, if I try and do right now without rebuilding and do a Xerox share reserved agent, that doesn't work anymore because I broke it, right? Because that's what's happening. So that's the problem. So it was basically creating many shares in a loop. So we really wanted, if it's not in agent mode, do these things. Otherwise, do command share reserved. Right. That's what we really want. All right. I guess I got greedy with my hold on. Got greedy with my not that one. That one. Got greedy with my trying to implement it all in one go. But hey, hopefully this is entertaining to you in some way. We'll wrap it up in a couple minutes once this works. But at least you can hopefully enjoy my end of week tired coding. So now if we do a Xerox agent, let's just do it. Just make sure we're still good. So we do a Xerox share reserved backend or testing, right? That all works. That's the TUI. That's what I'm talking about. Now if we do agent start and we do the same thing, What? Let's just make sure agent reserve still, I probably didn't fix it right. Xerox share reserved agent testing. That works. So that's now working again. So what's the problem? Let's got a stray one of these running. Get rid of that. Okay, let's just make sure we're running the code we think we're running. And let's do agent start, and then we'll do status, right? We're good. Xerox share reserved testing. Responding to version inquiry, recovering, close a closed channel. Did I, what's the problem here? We don't need this anymore either. Let's just get rid of that. Oh, that's probably the problem. See how it's emitting this log message before, yeah, see how it's emitting this log message? No, that's not the problem. Wow, it's been a long week. Reserve testing agent. Yeah. So the process implementation expects this bootstrap message to be the very first thing it logs, and it is. So that should be correct. Share reserved. Let's do this. Let's do agent share reserved. Okay, that works. So that code path is still working. Okay, we're good there. So we should be able to do Xerox share reserved testing. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Direct agent release share testing. Okay. I'm guessing I probably had some sort of stupid out of sync situation from the, and that shouldn't be a problem. You should be able to run multiple share backends. It shouldn't really matter all that much, but anyways, so yes, there we go. That is sort of the general approach for this. So obviously I'm going to spend some time testing all of this and polishing this code up. But generally the approach for these CLI commands that have overlaps, like the Xerox share, the Xerox access, and the Xerox release, is that it will do a test to see if the agent's running. And then it will also do various config and CLI processing to allow you to override the default behavior. And then it will decide if it wants to create the share locally in process or call out to the agent and have it do it. There's a rudimentary implementation of that. And like I said, the agent client, all it really needs to do is try and talk to the agent. If it can, and it reports a version that it's happy with, then use the agent. If it doesn't do those things, then we know the agent is not running properly. So that is how that works. So let's try it one more time. In fact, you know what? I like to do this once in a while. Just delete my entire. I'm sure I typed that. Get rid of my entire dependency tree and do a fresh build. All right, and then we're going to do a Xerox agent start. Xerox, let's test it without Xerox share reserved testing. All right, that works. And then start our agent. Bam. And then we can make sure that our URL works properly. and it does. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and check that out real quick. And just, I always like to um, double check what I'm committing to make sure I'm committing what I think I am before I check things in. And it looks like the CLI changes. I took some of those things out, moved some stuff around. Yeah, and that command agent was important, so we did that. And I think there's going to be some room to clean that up a little bit, but that's fine for the moment. And then an agent client, we just added this. We fixed these errors and we added this new function. So we'll say rudimentary implementation of Xerox share reserved using dual path approach. And we will, I always like to find the 751. Make sure I'm on the branch I want to be on. Great. So there you go. Super tired coding on Friday. That is a Xerox office hours. There's a bunch of interesting stuff coming up. I should have time to really focus on putting stuff out and focusing on version 1 Xerox. There have been a bunch of things that have come down the pipe related to OpenZD and other things that I've had to work on that have taken a little of my time away from Xerox, but I should be able to focus on Xerox a little bit more over the next couple months and hopefully get I'm personally hoping to get the first release of version 1 out before the end of the year. That's sort of the goal. I guess if things didn't go super well and I had less time to work on it than I'm hoping, then I probably would get it out for sure in January. But I would expect that hopefully in the next couple months I'll have something out that's got some really compelling new stuff to look at. So yeah, there's an office hours video. Happy Friday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, or if you see this on Monday, hopefully your weekend was great. And yeah, hopefully I'll put more of these out soon. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate your time. Bye.